Sarah Martinez, a dedicated music teacher at an elite Manhattan private school, faces mounting financial pressure as a single mother. When her regular babysitter cancels, she's forced to bring her 8-year-old daughter, Emma, to the school's annual donor gala performance. What begins as an embarrassing predicament transforms into a life-changing moment when Emma's impromptu piano performance captivates everyone present, especially tech billionaire CEO Marcus Blackwell, who recognizes something extraordinary in the child that mirrors his own painful past. As their worlds collide, secrets about family, loss, and the healing power of music begin to unravel, leading to discoveries that will change both their lives forever. Before we begin, tell us, what city or country are you watching from? It's always incredible to know how far these stories reach. The fluorescent lights in Lincoln Preparatory Academy's music wing buzzed with their usual annoying hum as Sarah Martinez stared at her phone screen, her heart sinking with each word of the text message. "Sarah, so sorry. My mum's in the ER. Can't watch Emma tonight. Hope you find someone else for the gala. Jessica." Sarah's fingers trembled as she set the phone down on the piano bench. The annual donor gala was in 3 hours. 3 hours until she had to conduct the school choir in front of New York's wealthiest families, the same people whose children she taught during regular school hours, the same people who saw her as nothing more than the help with a music degree. "Mrs. Martinez?" 8-year-old Timothy Chen peeked his head into the music room. "My mom's here to pick me up." Sarah forced a smile. "Of course, Timothy. Great work on the Chopin today. Remember to practice those arpeggios." As Timothy's footsteps echoed down the hallway, Sarah buried her face in her hands. The babysitter canceling wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a disaster. She couldn't afford to miss tonight. The gala performance was her chance to prove to Principal Hartwell that she deserved the department head position opening up next semester, a position that came with a $15,000 raise she desperately needed. Her small apartment in Queens felt like a world away from this gleaming Manhattan academy where she spent her days. Every morning she made the hour-long commute on the subway, watching the city transform from working-class neighborhoods to the Upper East Side's pristine streets. Every evening, she returned home to help Emma with homework at their tiny kitchen table, the same table where she spread out bills she couldn't quite cover on her teacher's salary. Sarah's phone rang. Emma's bright voice filled the speaker. "Mommy, Mrs. Chen said you might be late tonight. Are we still going to watch that movie?" Sarah's chest tightened. She'd promised Emma they'd have a movie night, their Friday tradition when money was too tight for anything else. "Sweetie, about tonight. Mommy has to work late. Jessica was supposed to watch you, but she can't come?" Emma's disappointment was audible. "But you promised we'd watch Moana again, and you said we could make popcorn." "I know, baby, I know." Sarah closed her eyes, calculating frantically. She'd already called her sister in Brooklyn. No answer. Her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, was visiting family in Puerto Rico. The few other parents she knew from Emma's school were either working or had their own Friday night plans. "Mommy, are you there?" "I'm here, Em. Listen, how would you feel about coming to Mommy's work tonight? Just for a little while." Silence stretched across the line. Then, "Really? To the fancy school?" Sarah winced. She'd been so careful never to bring Emma to Lincoln Prep, not wanting her daughter to see the stark difference between their world and this one. Emma attended PS 104 in Queens, a good public school with dedicated teachers, but worn textbooks and cramped classrooms. Lincoln Prep, with its marble floors and state-of-the-art music equipment, might as well have been on another planet. "Yes, but you'd have to be very quiet and stay in the back. The grown-ups have important things to discuss." "Will you be playing piano?" "Conducting the choir, actually. You remember what that means. You wave your arms and make beautiful music happen." Emma's voice brightened, like magic. Despite everything, Sarah smiled. Exactly like magic. An hour later, Sarah stood in the academy's main hallway, smoothing down Emma's best dress, a simple navy blue frock from Target that suddenly looked shabby against the opulent surroundings. Students' artwork lined the walls in expensive frames, and fresh flowers arrangements filled alcoves that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly grocery budget. "Wow," Emma whispered, her brown eyes wide as she took in the vaulted ceilings and crystal chandeliers. "It's like a palace." "Remember what we talked about?" Sarah murmured, adjusting Emma's hair ribbon. "Quiet voices, stay close to Mommy, and—" "Sarah!" Principal Hartwell's voice cut across the hallway. Margaret Hartwell approached in a tailored black cocktail dress, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. Her smile faltered when she noticed Emma. I wasn't aware you'd be bringing a guest tonight. My babysitter had a family emergency, Sarah explained, her cheeks burning. Emma will be very quiet. She'll sit in the back during the performance. Principal Hartwell's lips pressed into a thin line. Sarah, tonight's gala is crucial for our fundraising goals. We have some very important donors attending, including Marcus Blackwell from Blackwell Technologies. His foundation has pledged to consider a significant donation to our music program. Sarah's stomach dropped. Marcus Blackwell, the tech billionaire whose name appeared on Forbes covers and New York Times business sections. She'd read about him. Orphaned young, built his company from nothing, now worth over $2 billion. The kind of person who definitely didn't expect to see children at sophisticated fundraising events. I understand completely, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Emma knows how to behave in grown-up settings, don't you, sweetie? Emma nodded solemnly. I'll be invisible. Principal Hartwell's expression softened slightly at Emma's earnest response. Very well, but Sarah, she'll be perfect, Sarah promised, and so will the performance. As Principal Hartwell walked away, Sarah knelt to Emma's level. You don't have to be invisible, baby. Just be yourself, but quietly. Emma giggled. Quiet myself. Exactly. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Now let's go make some magic happen. They walked toward the auditorium, Emma's small hand tucked securely in Sarah's. Neither of them knew that in less than 2 hours, their lives would change forever, all because of a moment of music that would reach across the divide between worlds and touch the heart of a man who'd forgotten what it felt like to truly feel. The stage lights were already warming up, casting long shadows across the empty seats that would soon hold New York's elite. Sarah squeezed Emma's hand and stepped forward into whatever the evening would bring. The Blackwell Foundation's sleek black Mercedes pulled up to Lincoln Preparatory Academy at exactly 7:30 p.m. Marcus Blackwell stepped out, adjusting his charcoal Tom Ford suit, a uniform that had become second nature after 15 years of board meetings, investor presentations, and charity galas that all blurred together into one endless parade of obligation. At 38, Marcus had perfected the art of attending these events, arrive precisely on time, write the expected check, make the necessary small talk, and leave within 90 minutes. Tonight would be no different. His assistant had already briefed him. Lincoln Prep wanted funding for their music program. They'd put on a performance, and he'd make his decision based on the school's reputation rather than whatever amateur recital they'd prepared. Mr. Blackwell. Principal Hartwell glided toward him as he entered the marble foyer. What an honor to have you here. I trust the drive from Manhattan wasn't too troublesome. Traffic was fine. Marcus shook her hand with practiced politeness. Around them, well-dressed parents clutched champagne glasses and spoke in the hushed tones reserved for serious money conversations. He recognized several faces from other charity circuits, the same people who populated every high society event in the city. We're so excited to show you our music program in action, Principal Hartwell continued, guiding him toward the auditorium. Our students have been preparing for weeks. Sarah Martinez, our music teacher, has worked absolute miracles with them. Marcus nodded absently, already calculating when he could reasonably make his exit. His phone buzzed with messages from his office in Silicon Valley, where his development team was pulling an all-nighter on their latest AI project. Real work, with real deadlines and real consequences, unlike these social performances he endured for the foundation. The auditorium was smaller than he'd expected, intimate in a way that made him slightly uncomfortable. He preferred large venues where he could disappear into the crowd. Here, every seat mattered, every face was visible. Principal Hartwell led him to the front row naturally. The program should begin in just a few minutes, she said, settling beside him. I do hope you'll find it impressive. Marcus glanced around the room, noting the school's obvious wealth. Fresh paint, new carpet, programs printed on heavy cardstock. These kids didn't want for anything, unlike the students at the inner-city schools his foundation typically supported. Why Lincoln Prep needed additional funding was beyond him, but the board had insisted he attend. The lights dimmed, and conversations faded to expectant silence. Marcus straightened in his seat, preparing to endure the next hour with appropriate attention and polite applause. Then Sarah Martinez walked onto the stage. She moved with quiet confidence, her simple black dress elegant without being flashy. There was something different about her. She didn't carry herself with the entitled air he'd come to expect from private school teachers. She looked real, authentic in a way that seemed out of place in this polished environment. Good evening, Sarah's voice carried clearly through the auditorium without seeming forced. Tonight, we'll be performing pieces that celebrate the universal language of music, songs that connect us across cultures, generations, and experiences. As she raised her hands to conduct, Marcus noticed her fingers, calloused from real practice, not the manicured perfection of the other adults in the room, a working musician's hands. The choir began with a haunting arrangement of Bridge Over Troubled Water, and Marcus found himself actually listening instead of just waiting for it to end. The students sang with genuine emotion, not the mechanical precision he'd expected. Sarah conducted with her entire body, drawing music from these kids that seemed to surprise even them. Halfway through the second piece, Marcus became aware of a small distraction in the back of the auditorium. A child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sat alone in the last row, completely mesmerized by the performance. Unlike the restless fidgeting typical of kids at adult events, this girl sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on Sarah with absolute adoration. The performance continued with a gospel-influenced amazing grace that actually raised goosebumps on Marcus's arms. When had he last felt genuine emotion at one of these events? When had music last reached him, instead of simply washing over him like background noise? As the choir took their bows, Principal Hartwell leaned over. Impressive, don't you think? Sarah has really elevated our program. Marcus nodded, but his attention was drawn to the back of the room where the little girl was now standing and clapping with pure joy. Something about her enthusiasm touched him in a way the polished performance hadn't quite managed. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah's voice drew his focus back to the stage. Before we conclude tonight's program, I'd like to invite you to enjoy refreshments in the main hall, but first I have a special treat. Marcus frowned. This wasn't mentioned in the program. My daughter Emma is here tonight, Sarah continued, and Marcus saw her glance toward the back row where the little girl now stood beaming. She's been listening to these songs during my practice sessions at home, and she's learned them by heart. Emma, would you like to come up here? Marcus watched, fascinated despite himself, as the child practically floated down the aisle. She climbed the stage steps with careful dignity, smoothing her simple navy dress, a gesture so adult and yet so childlike that something twisted in his chest. What would you like to play, sweetheart? Sarah asked, gesturing toward the piano. The sad one, Emma said into the microphone, her young voice carrying clearly. The one about finding your way home. Sarah's face softened with understanding. Ah, you mean Homeward Bound. Emma nodded and settled at the piano bench, adjusting it with the serious concentration of someone who'd done this many times before. Her feet didn't quite reach the pedals, but her posture was perfect, back straight, hands properly positioned. She began to play. Marcus felt his breath catch. This wasn't a child's tentative pecking at keys. Emma played with genuine musicality, her small fingers finding complex harmonies that spoke of real training and natural talent. But more than that, she played with emotion that seemed impossible for someone so young. The melody was haunting, searching, filled with a longing that Marcus recognized but couldn't name. Around him, the audience had gone completely silent, caught up in this unexpected moment of pure artistry. As Emma's voice joined the piano, sweet and clear and heartbreakingly honest, Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest, something he'd kept locked away for 27 years, since the day he'd aged out of foster care with nothing but a battered guitar and impossible dreams. The little girl was singing about finding home, about belonging somewhere, and Marcus was 8 years old again, clutching his guitar in another temporary placement, another family who didn't quite want him. Emma's final notes hung in the air like a prayer, and the silence that followed felt sacred. Then the applause erupted, but Marcus couldn't move. He sat frozen, staring at this child who had just reached across decades and touched the heart he'd forgotten he had. If this story is touching you in some way, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Every place has its own struggles, and sometimes it's incredible to see how we all connect through such human stories. The applause seemed to echo forever, but Marcus heard none of it. He sat transfixed, watching as Emma curtsied with the same serious grace she'd shown throughout her performance. Sarah wrapped her daughter in a fierce hug, whispering something that made the little girl giggle, a sound so pure it cut through Marcus's carefully constructed emotional walls like a blade. "Extraordinary," Principal Hartwell murmured beside him, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "I had no idea Sarah's daughter was so talented." Marcus forced himself to stand with the rest of the audience, his movements mechanical. Around him, The wealthy donors chatted excitedly about the charming surprise and natural talent, but their words felt hollow compared to what he'd just witnessed. This wasn't some party trick or precocious display. Emma had just channeled something real, something that spoke to experiences far beyond her 8 years. As the crowd began filing toward the reception, Marcus found himself moving against the flow, drawn toward the stage where Sarah was packing up sheet music, while Emma carefully closed the piano lid. "Mrs. Martinez?" His voice came out rougher than intended. Sarah looked up, her expression shifting from the warm post-performance glow to polite professionalism. "Mr. Blackwell, thank you for coming tonight. I hope you enjoyed the program. Your daughter." Marcus paused, unsure how to articulate what Emma's performance had done to him. Where did she learn to play like that? Sarah's protective instincts sharpened. Marcus could see it in the way she moved slightly closer to Emma. "She's been taking lessons since she was 5. We have an old upright piano at home." "An old upright piano," Marcus repeated, remembering his own childhood. Foster homes with broken televisions and donated furniture, but never music, never instruments, never anyone who cared enough to nurture a gift like Emma's. "And she taught herself those arrangements?" "I help her," Sarah said carefully. "We practice together when I get home from work." Emma looked up at Marcus with curious brown eyes. "Are you the important man Mommy said was coming?" "Emma," Sarah warned softly. But Marcus found himself crouching down to Emma's level, something he never did with children. They usually made him uncomfortable, too unpredictable, too honest. "I suppose I am. You played beautifully tonight." "Thank you," Emma beamed. "Mommy says music is like telling stories, but with feelings instead of words. Your mother is very wise." Marcus glanced at Sarah, noting the way she watched their interaction with fierce protectiveness. "Emma, have you ever played on a concert grand piano?" "What's that?" "It's a very big piano, much bigger than the one you just played. The sound is—" Marcus searched for words an 8-year-old would understand. "It's like the difference between whispering and speaking in a big room." Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? Marcus?" Principal Hartwell appeared at his elbow, her voice carrying a warning. "The other donors are waiting in the reception hall. Perhaps we should—" "In a moment." Marcus stood but kept his attention on Sarah and Emma. "Mrs. Martinez, I'd like to discuss your daughter's musical education." Sarah's posture stiffened. "I appreciate your interest, Mr. Blackwell, but Emma's education is our private concern." The defensive tone told Marcus everything he needed to know about their financial situation. He recognized it because he'd lived it. The pride that insisted everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. The fear that accepting help meant admitting failure. "Of course," he said carefully, "but talent like Emma's, it's rare, and it needs proper nurturing." "She's only 8, Sarah said, but Marcus caught the longing in her voice. Every parent wanted the best for their child, and Sarah clearly knew Emma's gift needed more than their current situation could provide. "Mr. Blackwell," Principal Hartwell interrupted more insistently, "Mrs. Davidson from the Whitney Foundation specifically asked to speak with you about the summer music camp proposal." Marcus felt the familiar frustration of being managed, scheduled, directed from one obligation to the next. But as he looked at Emma, this remarkable child who'd somehow reached through decades of his emotional armor, he made an impulsive decision. "Actually, I think I'll stay here a few more minutes." He gave Principal Hartwell a smile that wasn't quite a dismissal, but wasn't quite an invitation either. "Please give Mrs. Davidson my apologies." Principal Hartwell's lips tightened, but she couldn't exactly argue with a potential multi-million-dollar donor. "Of course, I'll let her know you'll join us shortly." As she walked away with obvious reluctance, Marcus turned back to Sarah and Emma. "Mrs. Martinez, I'd like to be direct with you. Your daughter has extraordinary talent, but talent without opportunity is just potential that never gets realized. What exactly are you suggesting?" Sarah's voice carried both hope and suspicion. "I'm suggesting that Emma deserves teachers who can match her ability, access to instruments that can bring out the full range of her gift, performance opportunities that will challenge and inspire her." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "And what would you want in return?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. How many times had he asked that same question as a kid? "What's the catch? What do you want from me? When do I have to pay this back?" "Nothing," he said quietly. "Absolutely nothing. Nobody gives away music education for nothing," Sarah said, "especially not to strangers." Emma tugged on her mother's dress. "Mommy, what's music education?" "It's special lessons, sweetheart. Very expensive special lessons." Marcus found himself sitting on the stage steps, bringing himself back down to Emma's eye level. "Emma, when you played tonight, how did it make you feel?" "Happy," she said immediately. "And sad. But good sad, like when you cry at the end of a movie but you're glad you watched it." "That's exactly right." Marcus smiled, a real smile, not one of his practiced social expressions. "Music is supposed to make you feel things, and you have a gift for making other people feel things through your music." "Really? Really? When you played tonight, you made me remember something I thought I'd forgotten." Emma tilted her head with curiosity. "What did you remember?" Marcus hesitated. He never talked about his childhood, never revealed the carefully buried pain that had driven him to build walls around his heart. But something about this child's open honesty demanded the same in return. "I remembered what it was like to hope for something beautiful," he said finally. Sarah's expression softened, and Marcus realized she understood more than he'd expected. "Mr. Blackwell, we appreciate your interest, but—" "Please," Marcus interrupted. "Just think about it. Emma's gift shouldn't be limited by circumstances beyond her control." As he stood to leave, Emma's small voice stopped him. "Mr. Blackwell, would you like to hear me play again sometime?" Marcus looked down at this extraordinary child, so full of music and light and everything he'd lost along the way, and felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. "I would like that very much, Emma. Very much indeed." 3 weeks had passed since the gala, and Sarah still found herself replaying that strange conversation with Marcus Blackwell every night after Emma fell asleep. She'd researched him obsessively, reading Forbes articles, watching YouTube interviews, trying to understand what a tech billionaire could possibly want with her daughter. What she'd found had surprised her. Marcus Blackwell's story wasn't the typical Silicon Valley fairy tale of privileged kids building apps in their parents' garage. He'd aged out of the foster care system at 18 with nothing but a high school diploma and raw determination. He'd worked 3 jobs while putting himself through community college, then transferred to Stanford on academic scholarships. His first company had failed spectacularly. His second had made him a millionaire by 30. His third had made him a billionaire by 35. But it was what she'd found buried in an old interview that made her hands shake as she read it. "Music saved my life when I was a kid. There was this old guitar in one of my foster homes, completely beaten up, missing 2 strings. But for the 6 months I lived there, that guitar was the only thing that made sense, the only thing that was mine." Now, as Sarah walked through Lincoln Prep's hallways after another long day of teaching, she clutched her phone with a mix of hope and terror. Marcus Blackwell had called that morning. Not his assistant, not some foundation representative. Him personally. He wanted to meet with her and Emma. Today, at his Manhattan office. "Mommy, you're walking funny," Emma observed, skipping beside her as they headed toward the subway station. "Just thinking, baby." "About the important man?" Sarah stopped walking. Emma was too perceptive, too intuitive not to have picked up on the undercurrents of the past few weeks. "Emma, if someone offered to help you become an even better piano player, how would you feel about that?" Emma's face lit up immediately. "Really? Like, really, really? Maybe. But it would mean big changes. New teachers, different lessons, maybe even performing in front of lots of people. Would you still be my mom?" The question hit Sarah like a punch to the chest. "Of course, sweetheart. Always and forever, no matter what." "Then I want to try," Emma said with the fearless certainty only 8-year-olds possessed. An hour later, Sarah stood in the marble lobby of Blackwell Technologies, feeling completely out of place in her Target dress and Emma's hand-me-down cardigan. The building soared 50 stories into the Manhattan sky, all glass and steel and impossible wealth. The security guard who'd checked them in had been polite but thorough, scanning their IDs and calling upstairs for confirmation. "This is like a castle," Emma whispered as they rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. "Remember what we talked about," Sarah murmured. "Best behavior." But when the elevator doors opened, Marcus Blackwell was waiting for them personally. No secretary, no corporate protocol. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, looking more like a college professor than a billionaire CEO. "Emma, Sarah, thank you for coming." His smile seemed genuine, warmer than the polished version from the gala. "I thought we might talk in my office, but first, Emma, would you like to see something special?" He led them down a hallway lined with awards and framed magazine covers, but Emma's attention was caught by something else entirely. Through the glass walls of a conference room, she could see a magnificent black concert grand piano, its polished surface reflecting the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Is that the big piano you told me about?" Emma breathed. "It is. Would you like to try it?" Emma looked at Sarah, who nodded permission. As her daughter approached the instrument with reverent curiosity, Marcus moved beside Sarah. "She's been practicing, hasn't she?" he observed, watching Emma examine the piano with the serious attention of a true musician. "Every day. She gets up an hour early before school just to play." Sarah's voice carried both pride and exhaustion. "I had to move our upright into the bedroom so she wouldn't wake the neighbors." Emma settled at the bench and played a few experimental notes. The sound that filled the room was rich and full, completely different from their old piano at home. Emma's eyes widened with delight. "It sounds like angels," she said simply, then began playing the opening notes of Claire de Lune, something Sarah had been working on with her just that week. Marcus went very still beside Sarah. "Did you teach her that?" "We've been learning it together." "Why?" "That was the first piece I ever learned to play properly, back when I had access to lessons." His voice carried old pain. "I was about Emma's age." As Emma's music filled the space, Marcus began to speak quietly, his words meant for Sarah alone. "I know what it's like to have a gift, but no way to nurture it. I know what it's like to watch opportunities pass by because circumstances don't allow for dreams. Mr. Blackwell, I also know what it's like to wonder if accepting help means losing yourself, or if it means finally becoming who you were meant to be." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "What are you offering?" "A full scholarship to Juilliard's pre-college program, private lessons with the best teachers in the city, access to instruments, performance opportunities, everything Emma needs to develop her gift properly." Sarah's knees went weak. The Juilliard School, the most prestigious music conservatory in the world. That must cost. It costs nothing. Not to you, not to Emma. The Blackwell Foundation will cover everything. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma explore the piano's full range with growing confidence. "Because 27 years ago, someone should have done the same for me. Because talent like Emma's shouldn't be limited by economics. Because..." He paused, then met Sarah's eyes directly. "Because the night she played at your school, she reminded me what music is supposed to do. It's supposed to heal. It's supposed to connect us to something larger than ourselves." Emma finished the piece and turned to them with glowing excitement. "It's like the piano is singing. Can I play something else?" "Play whatever your heart tells you to play," Marcus said softly. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, then began an improvised melody that seemed to capture everything: hope and fear, dreams and reality, the beauty of taking a leap into the unknown. It was music beyond her years, music that spoke of possibility. "Now that you've reached this point, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Your presence matters, and so does your story." Sarah looked at Marcus Blackwell, this unexpected guardian angel who understood the weight of dreams deferred, and made her decision. "When do we start?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time in years, the expression reached all the way to his eyes. "How about Monday?" As Emma's improvisation soared toward a triumphant conclusion, Sarah realized she was witnessing more than just the beginning of her daughter's musical journey. She was watching the moment when two souls, one shaped by loss, one full of limitless potential, found each other across the divide of circumstance and created something beautiful. Sometimes the most important gifts aren't the ones we receive, but the ones we choose to pass forward. The music filled the room like hope made audible, and Sarah finally allowed herself to believe that dreams could come true, even for a single mother from Queens and her extraordinary 8-year-old daughter. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibility and rich with promise, carried forward on the wings of Emma's song.